I cannot remember exactly when or where I met Sarah. It was a long time ago, and my memory isn't very good. I think I first saw her in a big old town near a river in England. She told me she came from an old family, but I never knew the family name of the woman who became my friend, my study partner, and eventually my wife. Why didn't I ever find out her family name? Maybe it was because she didn't want me to know. But one thing I remember clearly is that Sarah was tall and slender. Over time, she became very thin. How can I describe her graceful movements or the soft sound of her footsteps? If she entered my office, I would only know she was there when I heard her voice or felt her gentle hand on my shoulder. She had a lovely face, but it wasn't a typical kind of beauty. There was something unique about it. I often tried to understand what it was. Was it her clear white skin or her thick dark hair? I looked at her long, delicate nose many times. It was perfect. I admired her soft red lips. When she smiled, her teeth were bright and white. Then I looked into her eyes. They were larger than normal eyes. Sometimes, when she was excited, they looked like deer's eyes, dark with long eyelashes and eyebrows. But when I gazed into them, I noticed they had a strange expression. I thought about it for many hours, sometimes all night. What was the feeling behind those eyes? I wanted to know. Many times I thought I was close to the answer, but then it would slip away. Sarah was very strong-willed. She was always calm and quiet, but her determination showed in her eyes. She was brilliant. It was like a bright energy that sometimes scared me. Sarah was fantastic at Latin and Greek and knew many other languages perfectly. She never made a mistake. She also studied science and math. When we were newly married, I often asked her for help with my studies, and we worked together. But after she passed away, I felt lost without her, like a child in the dark. When she first got sick, she didn't come to help me as often as she used to. She lost weight, and her skin became pale and almost transparent. When I saw that she was dying, I felt hopeless. Sarah fought death with all her strength to live. She was determined. I watched in pain as she struggled for life. I knew she loved me, but I only truly understood how much when she was close to leaving. She held my hands and said she was devoted to me. I can't talk about it now, but her love was part of her fight to stay alive. On the night she passed away, she suddenly got out of bed and cried, "Oh God, must I die? Must I lose my fight with death? No, I can't die like this." But my dear Sarah did die. I was so sad that I couldn't stay in that old town by the river for a few months. I traveled around, and then I bought an old house in a lonely part of England. This dark, sad place reflected my feelings of loneliness, but I decorated it with colorful curtains, carpets, and ornaments. I told myself that perhaps the bright colors would make me feel happier. Sadly, they did not help. I began to drink too much, but I don't want to talk about that night in my life. I will only say that one day I married a woman named Anna. My new wife had blonde hair and blue eyes. She was very different from my first wife, but how could I ever forget Sarah? I took Anna to a room high up in the house, where we lived for the first month of our marriage. The room was very large, with a huge window made of stained glass. The ceiling was high like a church, and in the center hung a big, beautiful chandelier. There were sofas from the east and lovely bed. The walls had long tapestries with gold designs, which moved every time the wind blew. My wife was afraid of me because I was often sad and gloomy. She didn't love me much and kept her distance. But I preferred this. I always thought about Sarah, my beautiful Sarah, who was gone. Sometimes in my dreams, I called out to her at night, imagining that perhaps my love could bring her back. At the beginning of the second month, Anna fell ill. She didn't sleep well and told me she could hear sounds and see movements in the house. "You have a fever," I said. "You're imagining things." She felt better for a while, but then went back to bed with a worse illness. The doctors couldn't figure it out. Anna began to hear strange noises and see movements that frightened her. One night, at the end of September, she woke up suddenly. I was sitting on a sofa by her bed. She whispered to me that she could hear sounds and see movements, and there was a terrifying look on her pale face. But I didn't see or hear anything. "It's just the wind," I explained. "You can see the tapestries moving in the breeze." But her face was white with fear, and she almost fainted. I remembered there was some wine on the table across the room. As I walked under the light of the chandelier, something strange happened. I felt something invisible pass by me, and on the carpet, I saw a shadow, almost the shadow of a shadow. I decided not to say anything to Anna. I poured a glass of wine and handed it to her, then sat back down on the sofa, watching her. After a few moments, I heard very quiet footsteps on the carpet coming toward the bed. A second later, just as Anna was about to drink the wine, I saw, or maybe I dreamed I saw, 3 or 4 large drops of bright red liquid fall into the glass. Anna didn't see it. She drank the wine, and I kept quiet because I thought it was just my imagination. After that, Anna's health got much worse. On the 3rd night, she died. Her servants prepared her for the tomb, then covered her with a sheet. The next night, I sat alone with her body in the bedroom. Strange forms and shadows moved around me. I looked nervously into the dark corners at the moving tapestries, feeling scared. Then I looked at the carpet under the chandelier. There was no shadow there, and I felt a little better. When I looked at Anna on the bed, sad memories of Sarah, the only woman I ever loved, flooded back. It was around midnight when I heard a sound. It was quiet but clear, waking me from my dreams. I thought it came from the bed. I listened in fear, but I didn't hear it again. I looked carefully at Anna for signs of life. She wasn't moving, but I continued to watch her. Minutes passed, and then I noticed a bit of color return to Anna's face. My heart stopped in horror. I couldn't move when I understood that Anna was not dead. I tried to revive her, but soon the color faded from her cheeks, and her face turned marble-like again. Her lips looked thin with the terrible expression of death. When her body grew cold and stiff, I fell into the sofa and dreamed about Sarah. An hour later, I heard the same sound as before. I listened, And yes, there it was again. A sigh from the bed. I ran over and clearly saw that Anna's lips were trembling. They were opened, showing her bright teeth. I thought I was going mad. There was a pink color on her cheeks and neck. Her body was warming up again, and her heart began to beat slowly. Anna was alive. I did everything I could to bring her back, but then suddenly her color vanished again. Her heart stopped, and her body grew cold and rigid. I sat down, thinking about Sarah again, for the third time. There was a sound from the bed. Why must I describe the horrors of that night again? I tried to revive Anna, and each time she seemed to fight an invisible force, and each time her body changed. As dawn approached, I was sitting on the sofa, exhausted, but Anna's body moved with more strength than before. Her color returned and her eyes were closed, but she seemed alive. Then she suddenly got out of bed and walked slowly to the center of the room, like she was walking in her sleep. I didn't tremble. I didn't move. I was as cold and as still as stone, paralyzed by what I saw. My head filled with wild thoughts. Was Anna really alive? Could I see her blonde hair and blue eyes? Why wasn't I certain? I couldn't see her mouth well, but her cheeks were like pink roses. Wasn't she supposed to be tall? But I was filled with a kind of madness. I ran to her, but she moved away. Then I saw her long hair blowing in the wind. It was darker than midnight, and slowly her eyes opened. I shouted like a madman. These are the dark eyes of my lost love, the eyes of Sarah.